Hey guys, I'm just coming to you to tell you about this online giving that's coming up. By now, you've probably heard about it. You've probably seen it on either the website or you've seen it put on Facebook or something like that, and you might have some questions about it and what we're doing and why we're doing it and what it's supposed to look like and such. And so I just real quickly over the next couple of minutes just want to tell you a little bit of information about at least why we're doing this and help you understand a little bit more about it. There are 6 reasons that I can see immediately why we are going to an online giving presence. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have offering on Sunday mornings. It doesn't mean that we're not going to pass the plate on Sunday mornings, but there are reasons that we should and could go with an online presence of giving as well. First reason, it's the wave of the future. I know that sounds very trite. I know that sounds very silly, but that's the honest truth, is that the wave of the future is simply things getting done online. In my generation, Generation X, and then of course the millennial generation coming up, they are online. We are all online. That is how we spend most of our time. Sites like Amazon.com that started up in the 90s. When I remember looking at that and going, that's never going to work, and yet that is the number one site that people go to buy things. If you go back and you think about Black Friday back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and just how big a thing it was, how big a deal it was to go out and spend the night, and to be able to get the best deals. Now people sleep in and just simply get online, get on their phones, to Amazon.com or to any other place, and just simply type in what they want, pay for it, and it gets delivered within a couple of days. This is how things are. This is how it's going, and so it is the wave of the future. And so I think that that's one big reason why online giving has skyrocketed in the church. Churches all over the United States, all over the world, have gone to an online giving presence. That, again, that's not exclusively. We're not just only doing online giving, but we are making that available. Another reason, much further down on the list, though, is that people simply forget. They forget their checkbooks. They forget their wallets. They forget their envelopes. They forget about the offering, and sometimes they even forget it in church. That at the moment they realize, as the ushers are going down, they never wrote their check. They never got their envelope ready, and they've got nothing, and so they give nothing at that moment in time. And most people, let's be honest, once they forget that Sunday morning, they never actually go back and make it up. And so this is a way that they can give, and they can give online, and actually they can give recurrently. And so and so they never actually have to forget again. Another thing very close to this is people go on vacation. Vacation happens. People leave, and the best time to leave is, of course, over the weekend, so they're going to miss a Sunday. And again, like the people who forget their checkbooks or their envelopes, generally they never actually make up for the amount of money that they never gave. They might go ahead and write a check the next week for that week, but they never actually write the check from the previous week to make up for what they forgot to give, or were not able to give because of vacation. And so this again is a way that if they've already set up a recurrent gift, if they've already set up for a reminder on their phone or what have you, they can immediately give. Or they're on vacation, they go, oh, it's Sunday, we didn't give, and they can just immediately get on their phone and give their tithes and offerings. Again, number 4, I've mentioned it kind of already, it's recurring. It can automatically come out of your bank account or off your debit card. We would not really encourage credit card for a couple of reasons, but I don't think that it's good and right to give God from your credit card. Should be, I would say, directly from the checking account or from your debit card, which of course goes to your checking account. But the idea of being able to give consistently and set up a recurrent gift, it only takes just probably about 30-45 seconds to set up for recurrent giving, and you are set. And you can always go back in there if there's a time that you need to change that. You can always go back and get in there and change that. Number 5, there are people that like to give that don't live in St. Charles or don't come to Highland View. Perhaps those are people who used to come and they have nostalgia and they just want to give to a ministry, or they've heard about us ministering to the people in St. Charles and they want to give, or it could be family members that just want to give a one-time gift. Maybe it's a Christmas gift. Maybe it's somebody that at the end of the year simply just wants to get a tax deduction, and they're looking and they go, oh yeah, Highland View, I used to go there, or Highland View, that seems like a good church. And this gives them an easy way to be able to do that. And the sixth is it guarantees automatic giving statements. Once you have plugged in your information, it's got it down, and it will be sending you a giving statement at the end of the year, so that you don't have to worry about that. So those are some 6 reasons that I can see immediately as to why we should go to an online giving presence. Now, there are some concerns. Well, doesn't this take away from worship? Doesn't this take away from giving as worship? Well, it could. It depends. I would say that it's more about the heart than it is about anything else. I have noticed, and I'm not placing blame, I'm not saying that this is not a time of worship. I'm saying it is about, I would see as the equivalent of this, that there are people that sometimes will give early, that they'll take their offering envelope and they'll put it in the plate before the service ever begins. There are people that I'm sure as the offering is going by, they don't even think anything about it, don't even think about it being worship, and they just throw in an envelope or some cash or a check or what have you, and they just give that way. So it's not, I don't think it's more or less worshipful. If we are a people who are living worship, then it's not so much about the plate as it is about the heart, right? If worship happens more than just on Sunday, it happens throughout the week, how we live our lives, what we do, what we think, what our heart condition is, then I would say absolutely we can give online and be just as worshipful as placing an envelope in a plate. And so it's not about the plate, it's about the heart. That being said, let me give you a real quick download of the history of giving. Of course, we go back to the Old Testament and we see there Cain and Abel, and they're giving their first fruits, and Abel gives his firstling of his flock, and Cain then gives, of course, his first fruits of the land. And we know, of course, what happens there. I don't want to go into all of that, but we see that kind of being the first that we see of giving. Later on, we see Abraham. And Abraham comes and he actually gives a tithe from the spoils of war, and he gives that to Melchizedek, and that is straight to the priest of God, Melchizedek, and it is, and so it's just here. This is the tithe that I want to give back to God. He gives it straight to the priest. We don't do that today, obviously. We don't give it straight to the pastor, but that's what Abraham did. You go a little bit further in Mosaic law, of course, and again, the people are bringing their firstlings, their first fruits, their first grains, their first lambs or what have you, their first bullocks, whatever, and they're giving it, again, right, they're taking it to the temple, but they're giving it straight to the priest. And so that's kind of the history of that kind of idea. But then we go into the New Testament with the church. And we see with the church, it's a little bit different. Of course, in Acts, one of the first things that we see about giving is that the people sold everything that they had and gave it to the church so that they could support those people who were in need. And they kind of gave it out as was necessary to those who were in need. Again, we don't do that today. We typically own our own homes or rent or what have you. We have our own cars. We don't sell everything to give to the church. That's just simply what they did. You know, the biggest portion of Scripture that we typically go to is 2 Corinthians chapter 9, where it says, sow sparingly, reap sparingly, give, being a cheerful giver, that kind of thing. All that being said is there's no place in Scripture that says that we must pass the plate in order for giving to be worshipful. Giving can be worshipful. Again, it's not about the plate, it's about the heart. And so giving can be worshipful any way that we give. Most likely, in the first few centuries of the church, before Rome allowed Christianity under the Edict of Milan, and then it became state-sponsored, most likely there was a box that people would just place their alms and place their money in, and their giving in for people to, for the church to distribute as necessary. Once the church became legalized in Rome and it became state-sponsored, there was no giving directly to the church. It was all coming from taxes. At least the vast majority. There might be small donations here and there, but the vast majority of the income for churches actually came from taxes. The government paid the churches. They looked at the church and said, "Well, this is obviously a benefit to our society. They teach morality, they teach good living, and so we are Lutheran, or we are Catholic, or we are Anglican, or what have you." And they would have of course, their state-sponsored churches, and they would give tax money to those churches. That even happened up in America up until the late 19th century or so. And by 1900, actually, that's when the passing of the plate really caught on. So if we're looking at passing of the plate as the biblical way of giving, we have to be honest and say that's not really the biblical way. That's not necessarily what they did. It's actually more tradition than anything else, and that's a tradition with a low T. A few weeks ago, I had talked about in a sermon, capital T tradition versus lowercase t tradition, and giving through simply passing the plate is a lowercase t tradition. It's something that has been around for maybe 150 years, caught on in the early 1900s, but that's just kind of how tradition has worked, and so we have gotten used to that, and we kind of think that's the way it's always been, but in reality it has actually only been that way for just maybe 150 years. But like I said, the wave of the future is simply online giving, and that can be just as worshipful, possibly even more worshipful if we really wanted to make it more worshipful, again, because it's about the heart. It's not about the plate, it's not about the click of the mouse or the tap of the finger on the phone. It's really about the heart. It's the heart issue. And so all that being said is, we are trying this out. We are trying this out until the end of April, and I would like to encourage you to see. If you're a person that wants to put it in the plate, absolutely go for it. Put it in the plate, but to possibly check it out and let us know what you think. We hope that you enjoy it. We hope that you like it. We hope that it can even be a help to you and a convenience to you. So until next time.